The button is pushed, and we are starting our very first podcast, Mr. Neighborhood's Block Party. And we have one, two, three, four of our mods here, one of them being the Discord mod, and I'm going to be leading everything tonight. I'm Mike. I'm one of the, I guess, pillars of the beginnings of this big group that we have. And I like just about everything. I mean, if you see anything that I comment or share, you get a pretty good idea of what's going on there. And I'll let everybody introduce themselves on the panel that we have tonight, starting with Robbie. And we'll just go down the order.
Yep, I'm Robbie. I like Silver Surfer. I'm pretty much well-rounded with damn near anything else. Whoops. Like basically anything nerdy there is to like, and I'm one of the mods of the group, and probably one of the ones that actually pushes the boundaries the most.
All right, go ahead, Brad.
So I'm Brad. My biggest interests are, of course, the comic books, especially superheroes, movies of all sorts, just like film in general, Pokemon, especially the Go, and of course, just the great nostalgia of the 80s and the 90s and all that nerd-related stuff. Um, I started Mr. Nerd's Neighborhood on Facebook about a year ago with Mike and Bianco when another group wanted to be pretentious. So I was like, well, fine, I'll start my own, but with blackjack and hookers.
Yes.
But it was just mainly something that was just going to be a place to share memes and articles. And here a year later, with almost 500 members, and Mike helping with pushing and creating this Discord, it's really gone a lot further, and it's happy to see that so many people have been excited to have it and how far we've grown in just a year.
Haven't we beaten said pretentious group in
I,
members?
No,
I think
not that
close
one.
to. Oh, no, not that one.
We've beaten our friendly one.
Are we just not going to say the name?
Yeah, just to be
Yeah,
polite.
out of politeness for now. We'll keep that under wraps.
Because you know there's two of us here that have grudges to hold.
Yes, I know. I've got grudges. It's just I'm spying on the camp, basically. Go ahead, Rob.
So I'm Rob. I can't even speak today. I am one of the Discord mods. I'm on Discord pretty much all the time because I have it on my phone. As Brad would tell you, I'd probably take my phone in the shower with me if I want to kill the. As far as likes, I'm your standard geek / nerd. I like pretty much everything from comics to movies to Magic the Gathering to gaming. Pretty much all of it I'm really into. About the only thing I've never gotten into is Doctor Who, and Brad is trying to get me into.
We're
You
getting there.
definitely need
You have
to
to
get
get to the
into
good
that.
ones yet.
He's on him now.
Good.
Oh, shut up. Eccleston was short-lived, but he didn't never reach his prime.
I agree with Robbie on that one.
I'll begrudgingly agree with that one. If he was given another season, he could have probably gotten much better.
As someone who just finished that season and hasn't watched any of the other seasons, I will say it did seem like the last couple episodes he really started becoming a decent character. But before that, it was just really okay. Where are you trying to go with this character in this show?
Yeah, that was the exact feeling I got. And as soon as it hit Tenet, they were getting into the stories, and I'm like, okay, now we've got something. As Brad said earlier, we're very close to our 500 member mark. I think we're only 2 people away at this point. We, at this point, we've started the Discord. We're going to start this podcast, and it's going to be an intermediate podcast. And you have to forgive us. None of us are really used to doing anything like this, and we're horrible speakers. So forgive us with that. As we learn and our tech gets better, I'm sure it'll improve. We are putting a member on reserve admin status, and I think Robbie wants to announce that.
Yeah, we will be putting Andrew Glenn on reserve admin status. He's basically an admin in training right now. Very soon, when it comes time to add another admin, he will be our next admin. So, hopefully in the near future, we'll be doing something with that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he's pretty active in the group. I'm pretty sure people will recognize him and pretty much just treat him like one of us. He just can't do anything but bring it to us right now.
Yeah.
With the 500 mark, we are going to be figuring out a giveaway. Because to be honest, we never thought we'd get this big. And we want to do something special to celebrate. So we're going to come up with a contest that we'll be announcing in the next week or so. It's going to have a prize that is going to be a small box of collectibles that our admins have contributed to. We already know of a couple of little items, and I mean, it's nothing huge, nothing spectacular, but it's some cool little collectibles to get you started on whatever you like. And we'll be announcing that this probably in the next week or two. As stated, we've got the Discord, we've got the main group. We do have the two group chats that are pretty much no man's land, as we call them. Those are fairly interesting to watch if you're old enough and can handle a good joke.
Just hard to police, so we don't try.
Yeah, very difficult to police.
It's not like you could ever police your wife anyway, Brad.
If you met her, you'd say the same.
I
Yeah,
did say the same.
we love you, Dana, but yeah, I got to agree with that. We're going to be doing this podcast. It's going to be an intermediate podcast. Probably to start off with about once a month. We're going to have a rotating panel, basically any number of the 7 admins that we have, talking about whatever happened geek related in the month. And depending on when we're recording, upcoming stuff, we got some stuff to talk about today. We got some future stuff coming out that we're going to mention and discuss. And in the near future, we're also going to be doing some different community participation things. There's been discussions of streaming with Pogo. We're working through the technology on that whenever we have the time and we're not stuck at work. Hopefully that'll go well, and we'll come up with some other things as well. We're going to be doing an RPG cast once we figure everything out for that. We've got a bunch of different options we're looking at, and Rob is actually spearheading that. Is there anything you want to mention with that, or you just want to keep everything under wraps on that?
Are you trying to put me on the spot? I figure we keep it under wraps.
Okay.
I know I'm finishing up this semester's classes, which should be ending next week, and then after that, I'm completely free out of classes for 3 weeks. So that 3 weeks, I plan to really dig into it, and hopefully, we'll have something really planned out by then to kind of give an ETA on what we're looking.
All right. That sounds like a good plan.
And I'd like to go ahead and apologize to everyone ahead of time. None of us have had a chance to see E3, so that will not be the subject of today's podcast.
Well, it's on the list. I figured we'd discuss some things. We won't be quoting anything from it because none of us have seen it.
Can't really.
I only got a little bit of it. mentioned to me from a friend of mine, and I need to go back and look at everything because I'm fighting off a sickness, and I know Robbie is too. I pretty much
Are you
slept
down
through
with
it.
the sickness?
I am not down with the sickness. I do not like it.
Or are you down with the clown?
I
I
have
do.
not liked it since it got remade by the new singer. Let's be honest.
True. Very true. All right. I think that about covers that stuff.
Do we want to give a shout out to our other mods on Facebook, just in case anybody's listens and want to give who those are?
Yeah. Let's see here. Let me look at my list. Uh, pretty much the same admins
You
with.
can't remember.
Shut up.
I mean, you
Give
know
me a
them all.
second. I know them. Give me a second. Jesus. We pretty much have the same admins from the group to the Discord, with the exceptions of Andrew and Rob. You know, they got their own little corner they're in right now. Cambio Bianco, he wasn't able to make it due to a power issue. Um, Victoria, Mercedes West, and Justin are our other admins. They'll sure to be rotating in the panel at some point. They do a lot on the page, and they're very active with everybody else, so I'm sure you all recognize them. If there is any issues, I want to go ahead and take this opportunity to say this. If there are any issues, no matter what it is, no matter how small you think it is, just bring it to one of us. We'll listen to your side of the story, and we'll figure it out. I think we've done pretty well with handling all the issues. There's been very little, which I'm very proud of everybody for actually being adults. That's pretty much what we want with the group. We want a safe,
Yeah,
geek nerd spot. Go ahead.
when we actually look at our reports and metrics from Facebook, like they are actually giving us high quality marks from them as a quality group with great member participation and no reports and all that kind of good stuff. So, like, even from their metrics, it's been a pretty good group.
Like we've only
I
had
didn't
like
even know that.
2 formal reports, and I think we had one person get blocked during the in-game spoiler ban for blatantly disregarding the spoiler ban.
Yeah.
But other than that, we've been doing pretty good.
And speaking of the ban, that's also something we're gonna try and uphold, especially with the Marvel stuff. Um, we're gonna try and hold it to about a week. Give everybody a chance. We're gonna try and do some spoiler separate stuff, so that way you know what you're getting into before you actually access that area. So if you haven't seen it and you still want to know what's going on, by all means go for it. But if you're avoiding it, then you know exactly where to stay away from. I'm pretty proud of everybody during the whole endgame situation. I mean, we went, what was it, about a week longer than the Russo brothers actually asked for to
Yeah,
try and
we
give
actually
everybody.
did.
Did you die?
What's that?
Did you die?
No?
You cut out.
Had a notification pop up on my phone. Let me fix that.
Oh, there you go. Like I said, technology we're working through.
It's a learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Brad, he saw shiny, and so he got distracted.
Actually, I didn't see it. Like, I had my phone screen off and something popped in and muted me.
All right, so we'll take it with take two on whatever Brad was saying.
Yeah, we did. They requested, I think it was 2 weeks, and we actually did 3 just to try to be as accommodating as we could to the entire group.
And I really thought that was fantastic. I mean, everybody was really cooperative with that. And then as soon as we gave the okay, I mean, everybody had at least 10 things to post about it. And that was just beautiful watching everything go on the feed, in my opinion. But all right, so I guess we'll hit the couple little marks that we have for this week in our intro podcast. First thing up is E3 for your gaming people. It's been happening this weekend, excuse me. I didn't catch much. I caught a couple little things, a couple little news, nothing major. The impression that I'm getting is Microsoft kind of blew it on stage. Uh, Anything else? I mean, they talked about the Scarlet. You know, they did some sort of cinematic for Halo Infinite, which are pretty much the highlights. I think Gears was on that list as well.
Is Gears ever not on the list?
Actually, no, they usually have something Gears related as well.
Yeah, last year they did the pop related Gears.
It was the pop, and it was uh the other little offshoot game that they announced that I hadn't really heard anything about since. And then Halo, the announcement of Halo Infinite last year was like their crowning glory. I mean, that thing gave me goosebumps just watching it. Especially with the absence of Sony this year, they had an opportunity to really, you know, do what they wanted, and I'm getting the impression from some of the people that I talked to that it just fell flat, which is kind of depressing. But like I said, they announced the Scarlet, and so far from everything that I've seen, it's basically just going to be a mirror copy of the PS5, which kind of makes sense if you think about the partnership that they just entered with Sony, working on their online experience. And I think Robbie had something about that.
Yeah, I'm listening to conversations right now, so sorry about that. But yeah, as far as that goes, are we discussing the whole gamertag thing, or?
Yeah, just gaming discussion, console, whatever you have.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was kind of crazy. You know, Xbox has had the whole gamertag thing since what, day one, basically, and uh, it's kind of crazy that PlayStation is still having issues out of their gamertag change launch with the games and the save data and stuff like that. When 15 years seems like a lot of time for R&D to kind of iron that stuff out. They basically sort of kind of made themselves the Apple of console wars.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, the PS3 had a lot of bugs when it first came out, and let me clarify before we continue here. Nobody here is anti-PlayStation or
Oh no, I'm getting a
anti-Xbox,
PlayStation of
really.
my own soon.
I mean,
I'm a Sony
it's
fanboy from the original PlayStation days. I followed them through PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, thanks to Rob, PlayStation 4.
I mean, they're a solid competitor. They're a solid machine. Really, the only issues that I've used when I've been choosing a console has been, their exclusives, uh, the PlayStation 3 launch issues, and then their live service. Um, when 360 first came out, and XBLA was really big, they had the group chat. You could play a different game than your friends, but still talk to them. If you were having an issue connecting or whatever, they could walk you through right then and there in the group chat, figure it out. No worries. But when I got on PSN, you had to be on the same server, you had to be in the same game in order to talk to your friends. I haven't messed with it since. I've heard it's gotten better, but it's still comparatively not as great as Microsoft, and that's one of the things that the the partnership is focusing on. Sony's trying to better that, which, if you look at what they're doing what they've done in the past 6 months, bleeding out a bunch of specs for the PS5 and backing out of E3 like they did.
Whether they want to
everyone's
admit it or not, they're working towards cross-console play. It's about their only fucking gambit right now.
yeah.
Sorry. Excuse my
Oh no, you're
language, y'all.
fine. I completely agree with that. I mean, we're basically coming to the end of the Great Console War. I mean, if you look at it.
So as the lone active PS4 player in the group, I'll share my 2 cents.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I think PS4 does have its pros, but I think a lot of those pros in the last couple of years have really been their exclusive with Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Spider-Man. I mean, those exclusives they've gotten over some of the exclusives that Microsoft has got. I think, Sony won that battle there for the last year or two. But I can see, I think we're getting to a point where really it's just coming up to we're at the end of life of how you're going to increase the technology for the consoles, and so you're just waiting for that next big new thing.
Yeah,
It did take them a while to kind of reach the pinnacle of the whole exclusive thing, though. I mean,
Microsoft is behind on the exclusives though.
well, I mean, Microsoft got complacent. Microsoft reigned supreme for a while, and they got complacent, and they rightfully got dethroned.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
but let's
definitely agree
face
with
it,
that.
competition between companies like that is what helps keep us gamers happy. Because if they're constantly trying to one up each other, then they are working on better games, more exclusives, better content, and better hardware. Like, that is always good for us, unless you're one of the type who needs both systems, and then that's good for everybody but your wallet.
Well, pretty much. I mean, my whole thing.
I'm definitely getting
Go
both
ahead.
systems. I mean, I've already got an Xbox, but I'm definitely getting a PS4 because I'm gonna have no choice unless I want to wait like a 6 months to a year to play freaking Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I think
my whole thing. Oh, go ahead.
I think the future of gaming to me though, we are really starting to get to a point where I think whichever of the two companies really can focus and come out with a good VR system. I know Sony currently has their VR system, but I mean the next level VR system. I think that's going to be the big one.
I still think VR's too far out. I mean, they've got some good stuff going right now. It's just the price tag on it and getting the backing to actually make it
I
accessible as a
think it's financially out
console.
of grasp.
Speaking of VR, without any spoilers, the second episode of the new season of Black Mirror deals very interestingly with virtual reality in gaming. It takes a turn that most people wouldn't expect, so I'll leave it at that. It's a little different than your last Black Mirror episodes, but the virtual reality presented in that is very interesting.
That's cool. I haven't even watched that yet. It's on my go-to list.
And that episode has actually featured Anthony Mackie, most well known nowadays as Falcon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Nice. He's actually going to be in the second season of Altered Carbon. Last I heard.
I've heard as well.
If you haven't watched that, put your kids to bed, and it is fucking amazing.
I will second that. Definitely make sure the kids are in bed, but then definitely watch.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go
I
ahead and
mean
throw
the
this
the
out
best way
there.
to describe it is um, Ghost in the Shell and Blade Runner had a baby.
I'm gonna go ahead and
Interesting.
throw this out there. How far have the rest of y'all made it on Cloak and Dagger?
Season 1 still for me.
On what?
Cloak and Dagger.
Oh, I haven't watched it. I watched like the first 3 episodes.
You need to move on.
Hey, I've only gotten. I think I may got past the first episode, but like I have to watch it through the streaming app, and that's not a streaming app that I normally keep easily accessible, so I don't really get in.
It's on Hulu currently.
Yeah.
Season 1 is at least.
Oh well, then I may have to check it out. I did not
they've
know
got
it was
both, I
on
think.
Hulu.
I don't know if they've got they've got next day streaming with that, if I'm not mistaken. So they should have all of them on there.
Next day
Hulu,
streaming. What?
Cloak and Dagger.
Hey, I think Hulu has next day streaming with that because they have an exclusive with Freeform.
Yeah.
I will say, going back old school, Cloak and Dagger were a couple of my favorite characters in the comics. Very obscure at the time, like they just kind of popped up. They couldn't keep their own series to save their lives, but I loved the characters. And it was interesting the take that the show gave it. It did add, of course, the little bit of the soapy drama and change some stuff to simplify it. But it's been good. It's entertaining.
It's
I'll have to start watching it then.
it's slow going in first season. I'm gonna go ahead and put it like that. It really is
Agree.
slow going in the first season. First, I mean, first episode of second season, it gets into.
We're running off of cell phones, so there's background noise for everybody.
Well, yeah, and my sister just laid the throttle down, leaving my driveway, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't deafen anybody. But yeah, I seen her leaving the driveway. I was like, just hold on, let me mute for a second. But no, I mean, first episode of second season, it gets into a whole different pace, and it just continues from there, and the pace never really slows up. I watched every episode of the second season as it was coming out on Freeform, and I mean, I was at the edge of my seat the entire freaking season.
Okay, I'll definitely have to look into that then, because I was getting burned out like into episode 3. I'm like, okay, I understand they have to find their powers and figure it out, but this is taking too long, and it just got pushed to the back of the list.
I had to watch it because I didn't know it was on Hulu. Like I said, I thought you could only watch it on Freeform, and I was like, I don't get on this site that often enough to watch it.
Hulu is actually becoming pretty badass in its own right. They're making very good deals to get as much next day air stuff as possible. Some stuff you have to wait until the next season hits, but it's really not that bad. I think the only two.
That's what happens when the mouse owns you.
Speaking
They
of genre
just bought 'em.
content on Hulu, Runaways is definitely worth checking out as well.
I was literally about to go into Runways. That is, oh my god, I love that show. And I don't even know the comics for that. I just love the show. It is fantastic.
It took a lot of liberties with the comic again because it's a different adaptation. But for those who may not be familiar with Runaways, either the show or the comic, it basically presents the concept of how when you're a teenager, every teenager thinks your parents are evil. Theirs actually are.
I remember.
The covers are pretty good.
I haven't seen the second season. I think the third season's either coming out or already out, but I remember power streaming the first season.
They are they're about to start filming. Elizabeth Hurley just got cast as
Morgan Le Fay.
what's the character? Yeah, I was reaching for my phone, going to go to Google, and I couldn't remember the name. But yeah, she just got cast on it, and she was always fun when she's in something. So this
Always.
should
She's
be
in one of
interesting.
my favorite old school movies, Bedazzled, where she plays the devil.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie.
And I'm going to try and do this without actually giving many spoilers, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Mayhem and Despair are in the second season.
And that's for Cloak and Dagger.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I got off. Yeah, it's in Cloak and Dagger. I got off the screen and I couldn't unmute it. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. All right, well, that's something to look forward to. Since we're already in the shows, might as well bring up the CW stuff because I think everybody's caught up on that.
I will say I'm not actually. I've got it added to my list of stuff to watch, but the last season or two just kind of got to the point where I really wasn't drawn into really wanting to watch them anymore. They're like, I'll watch it, but I'm just not that.
I will say you should get excited about Flash.
Yeah, Flash has been like the head of CW since season one. I mean, yeah, it's had its down parts, but compared to Arrow or Supergirl, oh my God, that thing has been straight hard hitting the entire time.
See, I guess for
And
me, I always like would watch the Arrow episode first. So like I'd watch the season of Arrow first before the other ones. And to me, ever since they got past the part where they covered, because originally they were covering a year on the island every season, and then they got past all the years he was on the island. It was like, okay, yeah, it's about time you come up with something new here for this.
Yeah, I stopped watching Arrow a couple seasons ago. I've watched a couple episodes trying to get back into it, and it I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, I get the first season was basically a test to see if it could be done, and they did well with the first season. The second season was fantastic, especially when they introduced Barry Allen, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're really doing this. I'm like, okay, this is great. I mean, the one episode where they do the Suicide Squad and they threw in a Harley Quinn in there, I mean, that was just fantastic. And then it was like, well, we've got Flash now, so Flash is going to go towards, stick towards the comics a little bit, and Arrow's just going to go off into left field. And when they started just bringing back the same actress and the same actors for whatever odd reason, it was just like, okay, I think I'm done with this.
now let me divert there. A show that goes to left field and is glorious in all its insanity. Legends
Legends.
of Tomorrow.
Yes. Though I will say this season has been very sporadic. It
I
was
love the addition of Constantine though.
yes, I mean he fit the cast very well, and they kept the guy from the show, and they're still using him, and it's fantastic. It's just me watching it, the story was there, but it seemed to me like somebody else had gotten a hold of their budget. So you really didn't have as much of, Adam in his suit or Steel
Powering up.
transforming or anything up. Yeah, anything like that. It was just very low budget, and but they still had the story, and it
Yeah,
was it was even a shorter season too.
the Time Bureau aspect of the season was probably weaker, but I just love the zany antics that they get into. Like it's reminds me of the just out there craziness of the Silver and Golden Age in comics, where it's like, okay, so they're fighting a fairy godmother. All right, I'll roll with this.
Yeah,
Well, and if I can take it back to Arrow, you were talking about you're just not sure where they're going with it. My opinion on that is, to me, I almost get the impression that they're like, okay, Flash is doing good. People like Heroes of Tomorrow. okay, we got to go ahead and keep Arrow running because that was the show that started all this, and this is what everyone associates it with. So it's not necessarily. It's like they're just keeping the show running because they're afraid to cancel it and just go ahead and be done with that show.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with
I
that.
will say, both of you guys' sentiment on Arrow is being reflected a lot in reviews and everything like that. I would recommend almost skipping Arrow and just watching the season finale because it sets up a very different dynamic for this next upcoming season that I'm not sure where they're going to take it, but it's going to be very interesting.
Well, let me include the crossover. You got to watch the crossover.
Yes, I will agree with that.
I will say the crossovers they have done that I've seen have always been.
Yeah, they have gone all out with the crossovers. This year it was a little less than normal, but it's because they're setting up something specific, and with Arrow actually ending after next season, um, with the addition of Batwoman, uh, it's going to be very, very interesting. Um, it's mainly focused around Flash. Everything seems to be pulling out of Flash at this point.
You say that until you watch the season finale of Arrow.
Okay, then I will back up and watch that, and I might put out an addendum to that statement.
it It's
I've seen it.
definitely setting up something interesting.
Yeah,
I will have to catch up on the season.
Go ahead, Robbie.
I've seen the season finale of Arrow, and he's right. All of it is kind of setting up something interesting, and I honestly feel like it's Arrow's bow out at this time around. When they reach the crossover for this year, I think they're going to bow Arrow out.
Well, I hope they do it gracefully because I really don't want to see the show just tank in its last season.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to, but Arrow it's been losing viewership for a while, and I feel like they're going to kind of try and bow them out gracefully before it gets to that point of them just straight tanking the entire time.
I agree with Mike. Like I said, I'm ready for Arrow to be over with. I just haven't seen anything great come from it in the last few seasons that I did watch of it. But I do hope, whenever you got a show that started off that great and set up so much, I mean, you got to think and keep in mind all of the superhero shows that CW has currently running. They pretty much have Arrow to thank for that to kind of start that, them down that road. So I do want to see them actually give the show a good ending.
Same here, and from what it looks like they're doing, I think that's what they're hoping for, and I hope they pull it off. Cause,
With the material they covered this season, I'm not going to go too far into detail because I don't know who's watched it and who hasn't. But a lot of the material they covered was kind of reminiscent of back, I think, season 3 or 4 when they were doing a lot of the time jump stuff where they were moving back and forth between 2 different time points and telling 2 different stories at the same time.
Okay.
And with what they've covered this season, I really feel like there's not a lot left that they can cover.
See, I agree and disagree with there because with the way Flash has pulled from the comics and still done their own thing with it, it, if they just did the same thing with Arrow, I mean, even if they turned it into a different show, uh, it would have been amazing. I mean, I know me and Brad have talked on this, you know, multiple times, and
Well, I mean,
the standing rule that was announced a few years back was anybody that any character that was up for a possible movie was not to be touched by the people at CW. So that kind of limited them. But they could still have, I mean, they missed out on a perfect Artemis introduction, and she was just a throwaway character.
Well,
And a little bit, Arsenal's been underused as well.
Very much. I mean,
Arsenal's
you
been
even had
under.
Kid Flash in Flash, and he was there for what, 2 seasons, and then he just kind of bowed out. But I mean, that was an actor's choice, not not a director or a writer's choice.
Well, and I mean, it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me that he made that choice because he then turned around and got in on Legends for a while. Yeah, it
I
was.
think I think the whole reason that happened was he wanted to finish out the story or that season, and they wanted him to have like a natural exit. So he would be talked about on Flash, but then he'd do something on Legends because he's away from Flash, and then he just kind of disappeared off of Legends. And he's every now and then mentioned in Flash, but it's not, you know, anything really relevant. They're just kind of letting you know he's still around.
you know, going back to where you're talking about using the comic material for Arrow, I think part of where they ran into some, you know, potential, like what do you do, what kind of comic material to use is, let's face it, originally Arrow was meant to be Batman. They couldn't make him Batman, so they brought him in to be that Batman, like.
Very true.
That's basically everybody's gripe is that it's basically Batman with an arrow skin.
Well, and that's what they originally meant him to be. They originally, because if I remember right from everything I was hearing and reading about back at that time, they could not use Batman. CW did not have the rights to Batman, but they wanted that Batman-like character because everyone liked Batman. So that's why they ended up coming out with Arrow and why he was written to be kind of dark and, you know, everything like we would expect from that Batman.
And then
But they get to a point they write themselves in a corner. If you're writing Batman show with Batman stories without Batman, you eventually can't keep Batmaning without Batman.
Right. And I mean, now it's what, 6, 7 years later, maybe 8, and you're just now getting a Batman character. And I don't know if y'all saw the
Batwoman.
yeah, the trailer for it. I'm
Underwhelmed.
I'm gonna say I'm scared that it's gonna be something that none of the fans want it to be. I think.
I'm fairly underwhelmed with the trailer. I mean, honestly.
Well, I think it's gonna end up being too much like season 2 of Supergirl. It, the wrong aspects were brought out and made like almost forced to be a headline when they could have been just as strong, just added to part of the story. Um, I'm hoping it's good. I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna at least watch the first couple of episodes, give it a chance.
Well, I think
I mean, people watch these shows to see these characters as they've read them in the comics. You don't want to shoehorn stuff in, and it's very obvious when they try to shoehorn stuff in, and that's what aggravates people. It's like, okay, we understand that this is an issue. We understand that this needs to be there, but it doesn't have to be the very first thing on the show.
And when you have fan favorites like Martian Manhunter and go out of your way to basically handicap him because he's such an OP character, But it's like, why is he there if you're just going to basically put a muzzle on him?
Right. I mean, they had Miss Martian. I mean, she'd have been a fantastic addition to the entire cast. I mean, the actress they
Are
had
we
play
talking
her
about
did
Supergirl
well.
now?
Huh?
Are we talking about Supergirl now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been sporadically watching it, but it's been sort of hard to keep into.
Brad's vibrators ready.
Time's up.
But no, I mean they take some of the cooler stuff that a lot of the fans want to see, and they've just kind of used them as throwaway characters. Some of them they've kept. I mean, Ralph Dibny on Flash. I thought he was going to be a throwaway character, and he was fantastic, and they've kept him. So I'm glad about that.
And I will also say I did love Brainy on Supergirl, Brainiac 5 from the Legion of Superheroes.
I didn't watch that one, so I can't.
He's gotten to be
verify.
one of my favorites.
Okay. And then you've got the whatever the abomination on sci-fi is. I, mm,
Krypton.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard for people to even make a Superman movie, let alone a show that doesn't involve Superman. I mean,
It's like
I've looked in
the
on it and
last.
I
I've seen
still want
nothing.
to see a montage of Lobo.
Yeah, I mean, Lobo has been the first thing out of that show that I'm like, okay, I kind of want to see that.
Well, I'm not sure who gave Sci-Fi the rights to be able to even make that show, but I think giving it to something like Sci-Fi was just a bad mistake.
I can agree with that. And I mean, CW has done really well, overall with their live action stuff, and the shows have been better than the movies lately.
Can we all agree sci-fi has moved far and far and away from what they were originally created for? They're not so much a sci-fi channel anymore as they are a science drama channel.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Well, the thing I think that hurts them too in shows like Krypton is the fact that if you think about any other superhero show that's out there that currently gets broadcasted between Netflix or Hulu, Amazon Prime, between those major streaming services, you can catch up on the seasons. But the Sci-Fi Channel shows like that, I've yet to see a place where you can actually watch, say, for example, Krypton. So unless someone has an active cable subscription, which many people today don't, like I don't, I don't see no point in having cable when I can watch everything through a streaming service.
Right. Which is basically what I'm fixing to do. I got the cable box has been unplugged for like 9 months. I just got to cancel the service once I get everything caught up.
I've still got DirecTV.
And I mean, everything with Disney Plus is looking fantastic. I was even looking at spending the money on the DC streaming service.
The
Just
DC
because-
streaming service.
Rob and I were talking about that today ourselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have the DC streaming service, but one of my coworkers does, and he was showing it to me, and it does look very interesting. Like, for the price they're asking for, you get access to comics, you get access to their shows and everything. I'm just worried they're not going to really be able to compete when Disney comes out with their streaming services and not only offers the Marvel stuff, but it offers everything Disney. I was telling Brad earlier today, I think DC would have been better if they had just done the whole was the WB, I think, that they're under, if they had kind of did a similar thing.
Yeah, I can agree with
Speaking
that.
of
Go ahead.
Speaking of the DC and Disney Plus stuff, did anybody get a chance to see what happened to Swamp Thing? Canceled after one
Yeah.
episode.
The plenty of rumors, but the majority of the rumors, and I was actually telling Rob about this today, the biggest thing, it was financial. They were being filmed in North Carolina, and they got grant and subsidies from the state to film there that helped cover a large portion of their very heavy budget. Well, due to governmental clerical issues somewhere along the way, some paperwork was misfiled or something was vetoed, something along those lines. They only got a fraction of that money from the state to film there, thus making that show just way too expensive for them to keep up.
Okay, so it wasn't that it was actually like bad or anything. It was just a financial issue.
Yeah, that seems to be the prevailing school of thought, is without that money that they were counting on to help cover that budget, it just wasn't making the money because unlike, say, the CW shows who have commercials and have sponsors, this is part of a DC streaming service that, let's face it, they're struggling to get their membership already in.
Well, we talked about too, Brad, earlier that, I mean, the fact that it was being filmed in the States is unusual in today's kind of standard TV environment where most shows are filmed out of country just because the production cost is a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
For
CW
sure.
actually films in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Supernatural as well.
I think
Yeah.
so, because we were talking about sci-fi. From my understanding, at least I know back in the day when sci-fi had a lot of sci-fi based shows that they were filmed in Canada also.
Well, damn, that's complete news to me because everything that I had seen, I hadn't had a chance to actually read into it, but everything that I had seen in the comments, they were saying it was bad. Like it was like they only had like over exaggeration, but they only had like 2 viewers for the first episode or something like that, and they just said, okay, yeah, we're nipping this in the bud right here. Because I mean, they put Young Justice season 3 on there, and I've been waiting for season 3 of that show for years.
Since season 2 originally aired.
Yeah, I mean that was a fantastic show. I mean they had everything from the old animated stuff in there, and it was just very well done. The artwork was fantastic for it. I loved that show, and I hadn't been able to watch it because I hadn't gotten the DC service yet because I was waiting to see what other stuff they were going to do. But I am seeing good reviews on Doom Patrol.
Yes, Doom
Initial
Patrol
reviews.
apparently is just winning everybody over.
Yeah,
I also heard the new Titan show was pretty good too.
Yeah, I've heard rave reviews about that. Everybody I've talked to was like really skeptical when they started watching. And they said about episode 3, they really got into it, and everything that was holding them back before, they just started ignoring, which is really impressive. I mean, even the new animated Harley show that's coming out, that looks pretty damn good. I'm hearing some decent things, from little small groups that have seen it before it airs later on this year.
My
I
biggest
just don't know
concern
how I
about-
feel about the voice actress that they have chosen.
Kaylee
Kelly
Kuko?
Cuoco, or yeah, like the promo that they did. I'm not sure. She sounds almost too juvenile and high pitched.
To me, she fit the animation. Now, if it was
Well,
like Bruce Timm, if it was Bruce Timm was doing the animation, yeah, it wouldn't have fit, and they needed to have what's her name come back to do it.
I kind of fall on Mike's side with this one.
Oh, I don't know. I guess I just still hold Batman the Animated Series as the end all be all for these characters.
I mean, who doesn't? Even
Who
if you don't
doesn't?
want to admit it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what most of us grew up on.
Yeah, I mean the Batman the Animated Series, and then you had the Justice League stuff, which were fantastic shows. I mean, the animation was decent, but then you had other people copying the animation, and that's all you saw was the same kind of build, same kind of character design, and it kind of grew out of it, especially when Warner Brothers themselves kind of backed off of the overseeing for a little bit while they were going through their whole.
I mean, I think growing up we all kind of loved Justice League, and then when Cartoon Network kind of took over leasing the rights and they started making their own version of Justice League, everybody started to sort of realize a lot of the stuff that CW just kind of settled on.
I can definitely
One,
agree with that.
WB, sorry, it was WB back then.
I think when you grow up watching anything, though, you get so used to it, and when you see something new, it's kind of like, this just doesn't seem right. I mean, that goes back to the conversation we had on the Facebook a while back about them relaunching the '90s X-Men and talking about, I was saying, as long as you give me the same voice actor, same animation, I'm good. But without that, it just won't seem.
Yeah, that's still the voice I hear. Or Cyclops, Wolverine, Jean, Rogue, Storm. Like when I'm reading the comics, it's either them. Occasionally, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, because let's face it, he epitomizes the character as well. But yeah, the animated series of X-Men, just like Batman, is the definition of these character voices 20, 30 years later now.
Yeah.
And then something like X-Men Origins Wolverine comes along and casts somebody that can't even do a decent Creole accent for Gambit.
I didn't see those episodes. Who they
The
cast
movie
as
X-Men Origins Wolverine.
the movie.
Yeah.
So to this
Less
day,
about that, the better.
Well, I will say this about that movie. To this day, I don't know if y'all remember when the movie came out, there was a leaked copy that went out that released it before any of the CGI was finished. So it was the whole entire movie, but the CGI was missing. I ended up getting a copy of that movie, and I watched it. And that has been the only copy of that movie I've ever watched. That's how bad it was. I was like, I'm not even bothering to watch it with the CGI.
Yeah, you didn't miss much.
I mean, that movie, it kind of ticked me off because they basically had, when I first saw that they had Gambit in it, I was like, oh yes, finally, Gambit's getting a fucking live action representation. And then, they had this good old boy in there speaking French, and I'm just like, come on, guy.
Well, I think the actor himself portrayed the right attitude and the mannerisms. If they'd have just spent a little bit more time with him working on the accent, he'd have been perfect.
I think, though, when it comes to that movie, you can sum it up with one thing. You take Deadpool and you sewed his mouth shut to where Deadpool couldn't even speak in the movie.
And it was still Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, the initial story that I heard was they cast him as Deadpool, and being Ryan Reynolds and being an awesome actor that he is, he started looking into it, and he got really attached to the character. And when they started filming, he was just
he was overshadowing.
Yeah,
he was overshadowing Logan's character.
Yeah, and he started getting bothered because it wasn't the Deadpool that everybody knew. And that's what kind of lit the fire of him trying to push for the actual movie. Now, I don't know how true that story is, but that was just the main one that I've heard for all these years. I mean, it took him 10 years to finally get Deadpool out into a movie, and I mean, that little teaser that they put out, that they quote unquote leaked, almost broke the fucking internet.
So what we're saying is the best thing to ever come out of Wolverine Origins was the Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
And he almost lost
fine
it
with that.
from he actually almost all the negotiations he went through to get the Deadpool movie. He almost lost them when he did the Green Lantern movie.
Yeah, that did kind of put a little bit more of a delay on things.
That is another movie we do not speak.
Rob is our resident Green Lantern aficionado. Huge fan. Don't bring the movie up around him.
The only thing I'm gonna say, and I think you'll kind of agree with me on this, Rob, even though you won't agree as well. Green Lantern, the movie was one of the last movies of the pre-MCU era where you had all these studios trying to do these movies. There was no coherency. There was no, real dedication to the character. And for what it was in that era, it wasn't that bad. But when you have the MCU following it, and you're like, well, why couldn't they do this? Then it is completely fucking horrible.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. So you can say today, hey, Marvel makes these movies and they're not necessarily catered to the actual hardcore comic fans because everyone knows these Marvel characters and loves this Marvel MCU now. So we can deviate from the comics a little. When you make a Green Lantern movie and comic movies aren't even that well popular, you're making this movie for the actual fans that know the comic heroes. And when you do nothing but basically throw a bunch of CGI together and say, we're going to give you a CGI fest and not care one bit about even the character development. The fact that we're going to call this Hal Jordan and he doesn't even act like Hal Jordan, no, your marketing completely failed.
I mean, he acted like Deadpool in a Green Lantern costume.
Yeah.
Can we be honest?
I mean, the whole scene where he gets all flashy and he's like showing his buddy how he can turn into the Green Lantern all of a sudden. I'm like, maybe if that was a guy, I could see him doing that, but Hal Jordan would never do that. So, are you trying to mix all four personalities of the Lantern into one person?
Now, whatever happened to the remake they were gonna do with
The Lantern Corps?
they were gonna do another Green Lantern, but it was going to be John.
Justice League happened
Yeah,
and derailed DC's all plans.
That's what I was going to say. I heard a lot of those plans got canceled and derailed when Justice League completely sucked.
Yeah, basically overall they had a huge list of characters they were going to do and put movies out for. And when they did BVS, they kind of sealed their own grave. BVS should not have happened when it did, and it should not have been what it was. And
It
then
should
they
not
tried
have
to tie
happened.
that in. No, it tied it into Justice League, which wasn't what anybody wanted. It wasn't horrible, but I've noticed a trend with some of the DC movies, the live action movies anyway, is they follow a lot of the really good animated stuff.
But they rushed
Aquaman.
it.
Aquaman
But they do it
was almost
badly.
scene for scene for that. Suicide Squad was almost scene for scene for Assault on Arkham.
Aquaman was almost hook hand Aquaman 100%.
Yeah.
He was Arthur, King of Atlantis. That was probably one of the better things to come out of DCU.
Yeah.
And that's not saying much, though.
I will say this. I think the issue with Justice League and Batman vs Superman, all that was, my mindset is DC wanted to jump on the superhero movie bandwagon that Marvel was living, but they didn't want to take the time to launch all these lead-up movies like Marvel had to get you to the point where you can make a big team-up movie. They wanted to jump right into a big team-up movie, and it showed why Marvel was so smart.
Right. I completely agree with that. And if they would just take the time and it looks like the new head is actually doing that, and they're starting with Wonder Woman being the first, and then from there it's Aquaman and Shazam. And they're going to introduce a couple new characters, and then they're going to basically do what Marvel did: is introduce some characters, do a team up, introduce some more characters. That's what I want to see. I want to see them treating the characters with respect, doing them properly, even if it takes 6 or 7 years to have a good team up movie. I would rather them take the time because I want to see a good team up movie on DC. I don't hate on DC. I like DC, but their movies have just been shit.
Yeah, Who's taking over for DC? Is it Jeff Johns? Someone told me it was Jeff Johns, but I'm not sure.
It was at
I
one
don't
point in
remember the
time,
guy's
but
name.
he seemed to have a they seem to reshuffle again.
Yeah, they reshuffled about 2 months ago. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the one that axed all the current stuff that hasn't been put into production yet. And he's basically saying we're starting fresh with these movies that are out and going from there. Which I'm hoping he does well with. I'm hoping he takes cues from Phage and does something fantastic with DC. I mean, as long as they do the stuff right, they will get my money, and I will be into them just as much as I am in the MCU.
Well, Wonder Woman sequel is the next one out from them after they've stumbled on Justice League. Aquaman and Shazam did pretty good, so we'll see how Wonder Woman does and the standalone Joker movie.
Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman movie was a really good one.
It was fantastic. I'm kind of iffy on the Joker movie.
Even Marvel kind of said, the big team up thing. It was a long time build. It was one shot kind of thing for the time being, and from here on out, they're going to do micro series. They're not going to do 10-year builds. They're going to do 2 or 3 movie series where they're going to have the build end in a certain movie rather than build for over a decade like they did with Endgame.
Yeah, and that leads us into the final couple things that I had on the list. And I've heard different things. I've heard that they're not going to focus on phases as much, but they're still going to have an overlying story.
See, I've heard that, but I've heard what you're saying, but then I've also heard they're still referring to a phase 4, that they're saying they're wrapping up phase 3, and I've still heard a lot of people refer to a phase 4.
I think some of that is just kind of like habit almost, because they're not going to be, they're still going to have the phases, but they're not going to be as defined by the phases.
Yeah, they're not going to be as prominent.
Right, because you still got Doctor Strange 2 and Guardians 3, plus another Thor being tossed around.
And Black Widow.
Yeah, and Black Widow. So they're not really necessarily going to have to fit into the current phase, if you will. But they're still going to be there, and they're still going to, they're going to intermingle, of course. I have no doubt about that, but I don't think they're just going to be standalone movies. I mean, that, and, the next one up right now is Far From Home. And I'm hoping everybody here has already seen Endgame and have seen the trailers for Far From Home.
By now, we can't help you.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw the trailer for Far From Home, well, you already know what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I think everyone was expecting Captain Marvel to be the head, and it's definitely not going to be. I mean, the trailers themselves for Far From Home pretty much set Spider-Man as being the spearhead for the next phase, which is completely fine with me.
See, I don't know about that.
Also sets up the multiverse.
Oh, definitely sets up the multiverse. I mean, Endgame itself set up the multiverse if you were paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
But see, I don't know if they necessarily set Spider-Man up as being the one spearheading the team. What I would like to see is, because they also show where they bring Nick Fury back a lot more, I'd like to see him step up back into the, because, for the longest time after, Winter Soldier, you really didn't see Nick Fury in much of anything anymore.
Or maybe
he was in for little bits and pieces.
I may be less active these last few minutes because it's my kid's bedtime, but I'm still here.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're all normal people. We have lives and things happen, so bear with us. But yeah, I think Spider-Man's going to be the one that that's going to bring out the whole multiverse. He's going to be the groundwork basically for the next stuff. I mean, with the addition of X-Men and Fantastic Four now being finally back under Marvel rule, he was very close with both of those sections and could provide a bunch of good scenes that would be fantastic to see on the big
He
screen.
is definitely going to be the bridge between the end of this phase and the beginning of the next phase.
I'd love to see
Yeah.
him be the one to introduce the Fantastic Four, and I'd love to see a Fantastic Four movie finally done.
Yeah, same
I
here.
mean, they've done it right at Disney. They called it The Incredibles and animated it.
Hmm. Can't argue with that. I mean, shit, people were saying that for years.
Or
And I
excuse me,
mean,
Incredibles was Pixar, was it not?
But it still
Disney
falls under
Pixar.
Disney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incredibles, they just, they tried to pick up from where they left off 15 years later. That's where they screwed up.
It wasn't a bad movie, but it wasn't really anything like what we saw the original wanted. Which, I mean, it happens. I mean, bureaucracy happens, money happens. It is what it is.
Look,
Some people love that.
all I know is my 30-year-old likes it. She knows Baby Jack Jack. She's got little Baby Jack Jack pajamas she always wants to wear. So I was like, all right.
Yep, pretty much. And I mean, I've shared all the old stuff with my son, and he loves that stuff. So as soon as they come out with a new one, he's like, "Oh, we gotta go see this one." Just like what was it? How to Train Your Dragon. Unfortunately, I had to choose between How to Train Your Dragon 3 and Endgame, and I'm pretty sure you can figure out which one won. So we just waited till it was on digital and we could rent it.
I think that's going to be totally forgivable for you in the long run.
I think the whole buyout as well is is partly affecting Dark Phoenix's reception. The reviews are not good. I don't think anybody was really excited to see it.
I think what happened was, and this is why I'm glad Fox kind of lost a lot of those rights, because from my understanding, the way those rights, a lot of the rights for their stuff, Fantastic Four, X-Men worked, they had to make a movie from those characters every X number of years, or they would automatically lose the rights. So it was like every so many years, they would just it seemed like they forced the movie out so that they could keep those rights, and the scripts are only halfway written. And then you had Dark
Yeah.
Phoenix coming up when they already knew that they were probably going to sell those rights off to Marvel again. So why take that time and effort to spend into giving you something good when you know you're not really going to go with another one after this?
Yeah, which is sad because I think the only thing that I wanted to see Dark Phoenix for was to see the actual casting in action.
Well,
That was really the only thing that came out of Apocalypse, in my opinion, was the whole last 5 minutes when you saw them in their '90s outfits, in the danger room. I think the actors and actresses that they had cast would have been just great
what I think is
under a
sad
Marvel
is
banner.
what I think is sad though is we wanted I think everyone, and Brad is the biggest X-Men fan I think in the whole chat here can agree. Everyone has wanted a good live action Dark Phoenix movie since X3.
Yes, but here's the problem with that. You will not ever be able to do it, I don't feel, because they always want to rush it. The whole point of
Brad, the
Phoenix,
mouse owns this now. The mouse doesn't rush anything.
well, the whole point of Phoenix and Dark Phoenix is you cared about Jean Grey. You cared about, wait, how is she this super powerful Phoenix character now? Phoenix was around for a while that you got used to her as a character, and then you see what happens to Dark Phoenix, and it's that loss of innocence, it's that corruption of character that you are really already been invested into, and you're like, well, what's going to happen now? They this is only this girl's second time as this character. Like, why do we care about her in the movies?
I think the original 3 trilogy was the closest to get you to actually care, but then they rushed the whole Phoenix change.
Mm-hmm. And kind of shoehorned it in to a secondary plot.
Mm-hmm.
Best thing that came out of that was Scott Summers dying.
Yeah, that too. And yeah, so I think that pretty much covers everything so far. If there's anything else anybody else wants to say before we kind of wrap it up for our introductory podcast.
If anybody has actually made it all the way through the end and listened to it all without obligation from being married to one of us, let us know what you want to see, any tips or tricks or pointers that you want, things you want us to talk about. Give us your feedback, your thoughts, your concerns, your input.
Yeah, we really want to see that, and we really want to get some more community involvement in it. If this actually takes off, we're actually going to do another little contest to try and get some members of the group to listen in while we do this and kind of talk to us in between to get some outsider input or some verification on whatever. I think that'll be fun.
I will say.
Go ahead.
I will say, in the future we'll try to, keep it just a little shorter.
A little shorter,
this first
yeah.
one went a little.
Yeah, we'll definitely work on that. But thanks for
It was
joining
only
us.
about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We didn't really have that much to talk about, so next time we'll try and, rein it in a little bit. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one, and hopefully y'all enjoy it. Thanks for coming out.